Passion, Passion opened up with a beautiful score, and I was really hoping that it was who I was thinking it was, and I was right. It was Pino. Yeah. It opens up with the Pino Donaggio score.
Oh, cool.
When his name pops up on the screen, I felt like we were in good hands, like from there on. Passion is everything you want in a De Palma movie. It is wry. It is well crafted. It has all of those things that we love in De Palma movies. It has a masterful split screen segment.
Oh, cool!
It has playful uses of lenses and color. The film is actually, it's actually color-wise. It's actually split. It has dominant colors in each three of its acts. The first act is suitably for a movie called Passion is dotted with lots of reds and purples, and basically the film tells the story of a set of female executives at a German advertising company named Koch, Koch, and they are advertising a new smartphone, and Naomi Rapace plays a producer who's come up with a great idea for a commercial where they use the smartphone as an ass cam, and anyway, it creates. They put it online. And it creates a tremendous stir, like where humorously I thought gets like something like 5 million hits in the space of 5 hours or something like that. And I thought that was funny, So did the audience too. Everybody was having a terrific time with it. Anyway, Rachel McAdams plays her boss, a higher up, who actually steals the credit for the idea. She basically says, you have the talent, but I made the best use of it. And she does this because she wants to move up in the company and go back to New York and leave Germany. And this opens up a whole can of worms, which includes Naomi Rapace sort of spiraling downwards into a sort of an addiction to sleeping pills. There's the wonderful revelation that, and I'm not giving anything away here because I don't want to give anything away about the machinations of the plot. But there is a wonderful revelation about a twin sister. There's a twin sister somewhere in here, which us De Palma fans, love the idea of the twin sisters because so there's a little bit of sisters in this. There's a little bit of body double. Because there's a lot of kink involved in the film, a lot of kinky sex. Though unfortunately no nudity. So also there's a little bit of Dress to Kill involved. When the film moves over to its second act, it becomes all the passion is drained away, and it becomes sort of the visuals become sort of dappled in this sort of icy blue feel. And this is at Naomi Rapace's sort of bottoming out period, and then the final act of the film is basically painted in blacks and browns. It's really wonderful. It's a remake of a film that was done about 3 years ago called Crime d'Amour, which starred Kristen Scott Thomas. And apparently wasn't nearly as interesting, from what I hear from the people who've seen it. Wasn't nearly as interesting mainly because there's another character that's involved here that is Naomi Rapace's assistant. And in the original film, he was the assistant was cast as a gay man, but in this film, it's cast as a woman that sort of has a crush on Naomi Rapace, and so that creates a whole other layer of intrigue in the film.
So a couple of questions.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of questions, because. I mean, gosh, I'm so excited. We have another De Palma thriller.
Right, yeah.
And I think it's the first one since Raising Cain, isn't it? Or Femme Fatale. Femme Fatale.
Yeah.
So it's been 10 years or so since he's worked in this genre.
Right.
So when you see it begin, and it's clearly De Palma-esque, as we all know and love, and you see Pino's name and that romantic lush score, I can imagine it is, does it feel like you're in a time vault in a way as a De Palma fan?
Absolutely. It is an absolute 80s. I would say like a sort of a mid 80s throwback. It absolutely feels like you're watching this on Cinemax late at night. It's got slinky saxophone on the score, and everything is sort of steely and glassy in it, there's times where you're confused about space and about time, and that's also a De Palma sort of mainstay for his thrillers. It's really, I mean, I don't want to oversell it because, I have to confess I like Femme Fatale a little bit more. I mean, but this is, or of course some of his classics. But I would definitely put it up there with something like, Dress to Kill.
That's good enough for me.
Wow, that's quite a statement, man.
I mean, it was fun.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
And the DP on this one is Almodovar's DP, which
right.
I find exactly right. I find it exactly perfect for a De Palma thriller, because when I see those, especially something like The Skin I Live In, I mean, and Almodovar has admitted as such that he loves De Palma. I see that kind of lunacy that I love in De Palma's thrillers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's perfect.
No question about it. I mean, it's what De Palma fans want, and he's. I mean, it's only a matter of time before it gets distribution. I mean, that's not going to be any kind of problem, I don't think. Good.
Okay, well, so what's next? What else did you have?
Well, next on the list was The Bay, which is Barry Levinson's foray into found footage horror territory, which is a genre that he's coming to rather late, I would say. This film takes place in a small town in Maryland, your backyard, Jerry.
Where in Maryland? Where they?
It takes place in Claridge, Maryland.
I've never heard of it. Oh my God! Okay.
On the Chesapeake Bay, and the film is sort of framed by the reports that are done by a newcomer to sort of a newcomer to the news game. She's an inexperienced reporter who's sort of kind of learning on the job, and she finds herself, as the film begins, she's sort of narrating the film as somebody who's being interviewed for a documentary through Skype. The whole film is done as if it was completely taken from news reports, from on the scene footage taken from people with cameras, also from closed circuit televisions and stuff like that. And first of all, this way of making this movie, I mean, it doesn't really make much sense, really, because there's cameras in places where there wouldn't be cameras, and sometimes they just completely drop it because they know they can't cover it as big. They just can't they can't convince you that there are cameras in every place. So
right.
it's even this is not entirely successful. I mean, in my opinion. Well, let me just say, I hated the movie. I despised it. But so you're going to get this immediately. This is part of their new midnight movie sort of sidebar that they have.
Right.
And anyway, the film is basically an ecological horror tale in which the water in the bay starts, and it's July 4th. It's, you know, the horror begins on a July 4th holiday. And the water in the bay starts having, you know, extremely, extremely adverse effects on every living thing, including, you know, there's a sea of dead fish and birds falling out of the sky, and of course the effect on people, which is basically lots of vomiting of both the stomach contents and the blood.
I gotta stop bathing in the bay. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for bringing this to my attention. All right.
Lots of boils and blisters, amputations, and well, I won't go into too much detail of what's causing it, because really the movie only has two modes. Really, it's really only about what's causing it. And we learn this pretty early on, what's causing it. And so the movie just keeps repeating and repeating and repeating itself. And then the other mode is, wow, look at all the dead bodies around here. Wow, there's dead bodies all over the place. That's the only two things that it does, really. It's never scary. Well, let me take that back. There is one really effective jump scare in it. That really did get the audience, and it got me too. But it's also kind of, you know, I find those jump scares sort of like, it takes a certain amount of skill to do those, but it's also sort of cheap in my opinion. It doesn't have any of the, you know, I mean, to me the king of all ecological horror movies is The Birds. And one great thing about The Birds is you never know what causes it. What causes it is not interesting. You know, that's not what we're interested in. I think, you know, maybe in the age of news, you know, 24-hour news, maybe it's seen as being something that we care about or whatever. But the horror from The Birds and from the most, you know, there's tons of ecological horror movies. I mean, you could even say Jaws is one. But the horror of those things comes from not knowing what causes it, and then just forgetting about that. I mean, explaining it is just boring.
Right, I got you.
There's a lot of really poor acting in this movie too. I mean, the only person that comes out of it unscathed as far as an acting goes is a gentleman who's playing the mayor of the town who might be culpable in the cause of the disaster, and he's pretty good in it, and but the lead is ineffective and not, you know, not interesting. The movie is very rarely funny. And I don't find it. I mean, I guess I'm just wrong. Maybe there's. I know there's a lot of people who like to see a lot of gore, and the gore itself is entertainment enough. But for me, it's just nothing. It's just makeup effects or whatever. I mean, so what? You know, I mean, I don't find that scary or anything. There's nothing scary about that. So, and then finally, I just want to say this: why is it that I can? It's a very rare movie that can get right the actual feel of television reporting. You know, the anchors on in movie versions of television news, the anchors and the reporters, they always feel phony. I mean, it's like 0.001% gets it right. And this is a movie that I think really tries to really wants to convince you that it's gone the extra mile to get everything right, but they can't even get this right, and this is the whole basis of the film. Plus, it's being directed by and co-written by Barry Levinson, who, you know, like him or not, you know, I mean, some people, I've had a discussion with some other critics outside, and we talked about, you know, how some people, you know, these days truly dislike Barry Levinson. And I said, well, nobody dislikes, you know, Diner or whatever, or a lot of his screenplays that he did early in his career, or even things like Tin Man and Avalon. But I think, you know, maybe later on in his career, or maybe with things like, you know, The Natural or Rain Man are maybe seen as a little corny, and corniness is sort of the kiss of death for a certain, you know, group out there. So, but you know, there would be no reason that you would look at this movie and go, yeah, this is a Barry Levinson movie. There's absolutely, there's no sense of his involvement in it, and there's no sense of why he would be interested in doing this. I mean, this is the guy that just did You Don't Know Jack on HBO. Mm-hmm. He's still doing good movies. It's still within his grasp to do good movies. I don't see why he would have to stoop this low to, like, you know, to remain relevant or whatever. I mean, why would you care?
You know, I thought it was weird. I think it's kind of speaks to what you're saying, that it doesn't feel like a Levinson film, that none of the performances stand out. I mean, because in the vast majority of his films, I mean, you can at least rely on great performances to pop up. I think that this movie was probably a last-minute thing that he wanted to work on, because he tried to get Gotti going, and Gotti kept getting stalled. Mm-hmm. And I think he just went to this because it was probably quick and it was there. That's my feeling. And he's done that other times in his career, not in this genre, but, you know, Wag the Dog was like shot in 2 weeks or whatever, 3 weeks. So who knows?
Well, he definitely had more luck with Wag the Dog, that's for sure. And, I mean, it's just, I mean, you know, I guess there's probably an audience out there for it, and God bless them, go and see it. You know, I mean, but I was actually, when I turned to my friend, Tony Dayub, who does a great website called Cinema Viewfinder, and actually also writes for The House Next Door. He's an Atlanta native. He knows Aaron. And so we always meet up here when we come to the festival, and it's always great to see him, because I don't get to see him in Atlanta very much. You know, I turned to him, and I was just absolutely ridiculously angry when it was all over, because, A, I would prefer not to see a movie like this. This is a movie that I go around the corner, down the block, and through the woods to avoid, okay?
I hear you.
Because I don't want any of this stuff in my head, and I don't want to waste my time on it. But I especially don't spend my own money and even the show's money to come up to the New York Film Festival when I could be watching Life of Pi and sit here and watch this piece of shit. And it is a piece of shit.
I want to watch The Life of Pi.
You know, I just don't understand why they would even put this in the critics' screening. Because it has absolutely no appeal to, 99% of the critics there who, you know, I mean, there's probably, you know, I'm serious, 99% of them are just, are interested in much more highbrow stuff.
Well, this sounds like something that'll probably make it to VOD. I mean, that's probably where we'll see this.
Yeah, that's a good call. Now, wait, did you have a choice between this and Life of Pi? That's what I want to know.
No, I mean it's just a sort of it's a continuing problem that I have with just how they have programmed the critic screenings. I mean, they've got some good stuff all lumped together over here, and then there's 6 days of stuff that's like okay, well, I mean I'm sure it might be good, but where's the good stuff, the stuff that people want to hear about, and they have that stuff. I mean, the thing is, the critic screenings are ridiculously long. I mean, given that the festival itself is just a little less than 2 weeks, the critic screenings take 4 weeks to go through, Monday through Friday, from 9 o'clock in the morning all the way up until usually about 4, and then you're just like, why would you have this? I don't know. I don't get it.
This is. I mean, I got to be honest. From what I read about it and just what you've told me, I never had high hopes for it. And I do like Barry Levinson, but I just got to say, I'd rather go back and watch Bandits again.
Exactly.
Question. Let me ask you, is On the Road screening for the critics?
No, it's not even part of the festival.
Oh, my God, really? Okay.
No, it's not part of the festival. They didn't select it, even as a sidebar thing.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's not part of the main slate, which I guess that means that those people, most of the people who do the selection are the people who write for and edit film comment. So I can only assume that they didn't.
Well, I mean, if you didn't find The Bay effective, I think you'll like. Barry Levinson announced that he's going to make a sequel to it. He announced it just the other day, and he promised it would be scarier. It's called The Michael Bay, and I think that
or Old Bay, or
I think it'll be more effective. Yeah, let's talk about an ecological disaster.
Seriously. Well, the next movie that we saw that day is much better, and it's one that the show has a history with a certain way, and that's Marina Zenovich's sequel to Roman Polanski Wanted and Desired. It's called Roman Polanski Odd Man Out. And as you would expect, this is a very, very effective sequel. She's a filmmaker that actually went into this notion of making a film about Roman Polanski, thinking that it was going to be a short film, And here it is, 7 years after she first went out on this journey, and in some ways, as she says early on in the film, she's the narrator. She says that I mean, in some ways she's been sort of imprisoned in making this film, just like he's been imprisoned by just this whole affair, for 30 years or whatever. The film begins with her talking about, the release of Wanted and Desired, and how, the release of that film actually engendered some new interest in Roman Polanski, and how she and bringing him to justice in America, and how she felt sort of culpable and a little guilty about that, because of course she has no reason to feel guilty. First of all, I mean, she did this with the best of intentions and did a wonderful job of highlighting an obvious or to me an obvious travesty of justice, but. As the film begins, Polanski is going out, as we remember, is going out to get an award for a Lifetime Achievement Award at the Zurich Film Festival in Switzerland, and when he does that opens up a whole series of machinations that involve not only the U.S. Justice Department and particularly the L.A. District Attorney's Office, who are all, just like that original judge, that was in the first film, who were all trying to make a name for themselves in one way or another. It doesn't just involve that, though. One thing that the film brings up is that there's also something going on with the Swiss government in the wake of the 2008, economic collapse that affected pretty much the entire world, not just us. Apparently, they came up with the idea of extraditing Polanski back to the U.S. as a way of appeasement, because the U.S. was actually asking the Swiss government to turn over millions and maybe even billions of dollars of unpaid taxes that were owed on almost 5,000 Swiss bank accounts. And so this was looked at as sort of a way to appease that, having to hand over all of that cash. As sort of a weird sort of connection there. I mean, I don't. She makes a really good case for this being the case. I don't know that is true, but it certainly could be true. But the film, follows Polanski as he's put under house arrest, and you think, being under house arrest in a Swiss show, of course he was in jail, in an actual jail for a little while, where he says he was well taken care of, in a very, very moving final scene in the film. But also, you see him, spirited away to this beautiful Swiss chalet that they have, he and his wife, Emmanuel Signier. It's, I have to say, I mean, I feel that the guy is just bedeviled with tragedy, and nothing says that more than just there's this great photo. I guess, she found this incredible photo taken by one of the many paparazzi outside of the Swiss chalet, which, by the way, is a absurd sort of surreal thing going on there too. Just this chalet is in the middle of nowhere, and here's all these mountains all around, and it's beautiful. And anyway, this one shot of Polanski just sort of peeking out of the window, just like a ghost or something, And it's just, to me, it's heartbreaking. I mean, here's this 76-year-old director. Yes, displayed bad judgment, but was told by the judge way back in 76 or wherever it was that, look, it was, the charge is unlawful sexual intercourse. It wasn't rape. That's what it was. It was unlawful sexual intercourse. That was the actual charge. And the judge told him that this was the deal, but the judge went back on it after the DAs went in there and talked him out of it. And that's not how the justice system is supposed to work. So that's what this issue is.
So, but two questions. The first film she had the option, but she chose not to interview Polanski on camera. Is he on camera in this one?
He is on camera, but he's not interviewed by her. Okay. I did have an opportunity to ask her. She was interviewed by Skype, and and she asked, by the way, that anyone who had a question, please identify themselves, or who they're with, and so forth. So I did. I asked the second question, and my question was, and when I mentioned Movie Geeks United, she gave a smile. I know that there's Jamie. Do you want to say something about
No, I mean, she was on the show to talk about the original. She was actually driving on the way to Sundance when she called talk about the original, and then we spoke to Brett Ratner, who was producing the sequel, at least at the time, and we spoke to him actually the day that Polanski was arrested. And so that's what led to it being covered on international news, that snippet from our show where he's talking about he's putting together another Polanski documentary with Marina, and this time we're going to try to get him on camera, and we're going to set the record straight, and it's really about the justice system. And so what question did you ask?
Well, I asked her, given that she says on the outset she refers to feeling guilty about, even making the first film in some ways. I wondered, wondered if she had gotten over that guilt and whether she had any sense that that Polanski had any blame for her. And she was very, political about her answer to that. She basically sort of left it at, my relationship with Polanski is extremely, extremely complicated.
Wow.
Oh. And
interesting.
And she just sort of left it at that. As far as her guilt, whether she still feels guilt, she says that she's done with this phase of her career. She's ready to, she said her child has said that she needs to go and do a romantic comedy now. When in fact she's doing another documentary about another famous person with the initials RP. She's doing a documentary about Richard Pryor.
Wow!
Wow!
And she's in the cutting. She's about to enter the editing stages of that. So, but she is happy with the way this particular film, Odd Man Out, sort of wraps up the entire affair. Which, by the way, as a film, the interviewees, some of the interviewees in the film say that they think that it's something that's never going to go away. That this has no end. That you're talking about two forces that absolutely refuse to compromise in any way, shape, or form. And
by the way, that doesn't include the victim.
Yes.
Because the victim wants it all behind her. She just wants to end it. Stop the kind of the threats of arrest and stop the extradition threats and just leave it be.
And in this film, we actually get her, but we also talk to the mother, I think, for the first time.
Oh wow!
In this film, so the filmmaker actually travels to Hawaii, where the mother is living, and interviews her, and it's interesting. The mother has a very sort of jovial sort of feel, and it made one of the critics ask a question about this referred to the woman as being a silly woman or whatever, and Marina took exception to that. She said she's not a silly woman. She is somebody that likes to laugh, and I did try and direct her, not to, but not overbearingly so. I just, I captured her like she actually is. But she did capture her at a point where where the mother actually couldn't say Roman Polanski's name, and the director from behind the camera said, "What, you can't say his name? Come on, try and say it right now." And the mother just couldn't do it. But as far as the daughter goes, Samantha and her husband are way past being over this. That said, Samantha is writing a book about her experiences with this. Now, you would say, well, if she's really over this, why would you be going to write a book? Well, the reason for that is, if anybody ever asks about it ever again, she can always say, look, it's in the book. It's it.
Right.
I'm never talking about it ever again.
Right.
So I can see where somebody would want to write a book. I mean, besides, any kind of financial gain or whatever.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, that's a major coup to get the mother involved, because she's bore a lot of brunt of blame too. It's like what mother would, because the mother is the person that dropped her off.
Right.
If I remember correctly, like what kind of mother would do that, or so her behavior has been called into question too. But this is my final question about this, and then we can move to the other movies. You say some people say there's no end, but in terms of just the movie, does it feel like it reaches some sort of resolution?
I feel like the Polanski's number one concern in all of this is to in at least this chapter of his life is really to protect his marriage, which he's been happily married to Miss Seignier for a little while now. I think almost 20 years, if not exactly 20 years. And they have 2 children, and he wants to protect that life. He's very happy with that life. He's not going around, with 2 Playboy buddies on his arm like he was in the 60s anymore. So I think for him, being restored to, and I think it should be for us too, being restored to that life and being allowed to live out the rest of his life in that way, and still making movies occasionally, is as happy as it's going to get, really. I mean, so yes, I guess so. But like I said, the last scene of the movie, which I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's extremely moving.
Okay.
It's extremely moving, and it does involve a statement from Roman Polanski.
I hope HBO picks this up, just like we picked up the last one. Yeah. Okay, so your next one was the Bill Murray one, right?
Yeah, the next one is Hyde Park on Hudson, directed by Roger Mitchell, starring Bill Murray as Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who's in the beginning of the pre-war stage of his presidency, and he's ensconced in an idyllic, country house. So this doesn't take place at the White House or in Washington or anything like that. It's in his country estate, where he strikes up. Even though Eleanor is with him, Eleanor is played by Olivia Williams.
Oh, really? Okay.
And she really does recall, without looking exactly like her, she does recall Eleanor Roosevelt quite a bit. Olivia Williams is Eleanor, but he strikes up dalliance with his 5th cousin, that's played by Laura Linney, and Laura Linney is a sort of cloistered away innocent that hardly knows at the beginning of the movie, has hardly met Roosevelt before, and she's been busy taking care of her mother, who's been sick for many years, and she's just sort of been shut away, kind of, and her relationship with Roosevelt opens up her world. That is part of the movie, though. That's only part of the movie. The other part of the movie, which was a surprise to me, is the involvement of the same 2 characters that led the King's Speech, which was, of course, the King and the Queen.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have Samuel West playing King George, and Olivia Colman, who was in Tyrannosaur a year or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia Colman playing the Queen. They're visiting America, visiting Roosevelt, in order to get him, in order to sort of repair what's been sort of a damaged relationship between the 2 countries. And in order to get Roosevelt's okay to back them in the war that's coming up, and the only glimpse of Hitler that we have in this movie, by the way, is on a stamp that's in FDR's stamp collection that he brings out in order to impress the girls and get them to sleep with him. Let me just say this about this movie. These two stories that are going on at the same time don't meld well together at all. They seem very independent of each other and don't seem connected really in any other way except by happenstance. As far as Bill Murray goes, that's the main reason that everybody's interested in this. The shame to me is that it's not Bill Murray. Bill Murray's good in the movie and everything. He's fine in it. But there are times where he almost takes a back seat to the characters of the King and the Queen. And, of course, we have the stuttering that comes up again. Of course, at this time, of course, George had not conquered the stuttering problem. So here we have two leaders of state that each have an affliction of a certain sort, and I think they find a common bond in that. And they have one major scene together, these two guys. Actually, their relationship is quite sweet in the movie. It's quite well done. And Samuel West does an excellent job. You got to give it to an actor that goes and takes a part that was just in the movie theaters, and some other guy won an Oscar playing the same part, and he still attacks it with as much aplomb as West does here. He's really good in the movie, and he does make the role his own, even though that movie is still fresh in our minds. But there's just not enough, for me at least, there's not enough of an emphasis on Bill Murray's character, or even for that matter, Laura Linney's character, or even Eleanor's character for that matter. It's all just sort of lost in there. Almost everything just sort of seems free-floating and lost. Ultimately, the movie is pleasant. It's widescreen. It's very well art directed, as you might imagine. But it's also sort of a movie for old ladies, really. And it has some funny moments, and it's got a little bit of charm in there. But I don't see this movie as being anything that's it's going to engender a lot of Oscar love or anything like that, even though at the surface it seems like, oh, Bill Murray is FDR. I mean, he's a good actor. You think, oh, this is going to be great. It's just not that. It's not going to happen. It's like he's almost a supporting actor in the film.
So you wouldn't put him as because when we discussed it last week before you'd seen it, we thought that Bill Murray might get nominated, but you wouldn't say that now after seeing it.
No.